Hey guys, it's Miss B. I decided to do my video today outside because it's just such a beautiful day and I wanted to enjoy it. So hopefully it doesn't get too windy and you can hear me okay. So I'm going to read chapters 15 and 16 today of Charlotte's Web. And chapter 13, that was when Charlotte decided her next word in her web was going to be radiant. And that was also in chapter 14 when Fern's mom decided she needed to go to the doctor and talk to the doctor about Fern. And the doctor said, you know what, there's nothing wrong with Fern. She's just a kid who has a good imagination. All right, let's see what happens in chapter 15, titled The Crickets. The crickets sang in the grasses. They sang the song of summer's ending, a sad song. Summer is over and gone. Over and gone, they sang. And the crickets felt that it was their duty to warn everybody that summer cannot last forever. Even on the most beautiful days in the whole year, the days when summer is changing into fall, the crickets spread the rumor of sadness and change. Everybody heard the song of the crickets. Avery and Fern heard it as they walked the dusty road. They knew that school would soon begin again. And the young geese heard it and knew that they would never be little goslings again. Charlotte heard it and knew that she didn't have much time left. Mrs. Zuckerman, at work in the kitchen, heard the crickets, and a sadness even came over her, too. Another summer gone, she sighed. Lurvy, at work building a crate for Wilbur, heard the song and knew it was time to dig some potatoes. How summer is over and gone, repeated the crickets. How many nights till frost, sang the crickets. Goodbye, summer, goodbye. The sheep heard the crickets, and they felt so uneasy that they broke a hole in the pasture fence and wandered up into the field across the road. The gander discovered the hole and led his family through, and they walked to the orchard and ate the apples that were lying on the ground. So imagine that. You've got the gander escaping, and you've got the sheep escaping. A little maple tree in the swamp heard the cricket song and turned bright red with anxiety. Wilbur was now the center of attraction on this farm. Good food and regular hours were showing results. Wilbur was a pig that any man would be proud of. And one day, more than 100 people came to stand at his yard and admire him. Charlotte had written the word radiant, and Wilbur really looked radiant as he stood in the golden sunlight. Ever since the spider had befriended him, he had done his best to live up to his reputation. When her web said some pig, Wilbur tried hard to look like some pig. When Charlotte's web said terrific, Wilbur had tried to look terrific. So now that the web said radiant, he did everything possible to make himself glow. It is not easy to look radiant, but Wilbur threw himself into it with will. He would turn his head slightly and blink his eyelashes, and then he would breathe deeply, and when his audience grew bored, he would spring into the air and do a backflip with a half twist. Do you think that'd be cool to see a pig do that? I would be impressed. At this, the crowd would yell and cheer. Woo! How is that for a pig? Mr. Zuckerman would ask, pleased with himself. That pig is radiant, he said. Some of Wilbur's friends in the barn worried for fear that all this attention would go to his head and make him stuck up, but it never did. Wilbur was modest. That means that he didn't think he was the best thing ever. He was just kind of modest about himself. Fame did not spoil him. He still worried some about the future, as he could hardly believe that a mere spider was able to save his life. And sometimes at night, he would have a bad dream. He dreamed that the men were coming to get him with knives and guns. But that was only a dream, and in the daytime, Wilbur usually felt happy and confident. No pig ever had truer friends, and he realized that friendship is one of those most satisfying things in the whole world. Even the song of the crickets didn't make Wilbur sad. He knew it was almost time for the county fair, and he was looking forward to a trip. If he could distinguish himself at the fair, that means make himself stand out, and maybe win some prize money, he was certain Zuckerman would let him live. All right, I want you to predict what's going to happen at the fair. Is he going to win? Is it going to make Zuckerman love him more? Charlotte had worries of her own, but she just kept quiet about them. One morning, Wilbur asked her about the fair. You're going with me, aren't you, Charlotte? He said. Well, I don't really know, replied Charlotte. The fair comes at a bad time for me. I'll find it inconvenient to leave home, even for a few days. Well, why? Said Wilbur. Oh, I just don't feel like leaving my web. Too much going on. Oh, please come with me, please, begged Wilbur. I need you, Charlotte. I can't go to the fair without you. You've got to come. No, said Charlotte. I believe I'd better stay home and see if I can't get some work done. Well, what kind of work? Asked Wilbur. Egg laying. It's time I made an egg sack and filled it with eggs. I didn't know you laid eggs, said Wilbur in amazement. Oh, sure, said the spider. I'm versatile. What does versatile mean? Asked Wilbur. Versatile means I can turn with ease from one thing to another. Kind of like flexible. It means I don't have to limit my activities to just spinning and trapping and stunts like that. Well, why don't you come with me to the fairgrounds and lay your eggs there? Pleaded Wilbur. It would be wonderful fun. Charlotte gave her web a twitch and moodily watched its way. I'm afraid not, she said. You don't know the first thing about egg laying, Wilbur. I cannot arrange my family duties to suit the management of the county fair. When I get ready to lay my eggs, I have to lay eggs, fair or no fair. However, I don't want you to worry about it. You might lose weight. We'll leave it this way. I'll come to the fair if I possibly can. Oh, good, said Wilbur. I knew you wouldn't forsake me just when I need you most. All that day, Wilbur stayed inside, taking life easy in the straw. Charlotte rested and ate a grasshopper. She knew that she couldn't help Wilbur much longer. In a few days, she'd have to drop everything and build a beautiful little sack that would hold her eggs. All right, chapter 16, off to the fair. The night before the county fair, everybody went to bed early. Fern and Avery were in bed by 8. Avery lay dreaming that the Ferris wheel had stopped and that he was stuck in the top of the car. Fern lay dreaming that she was getting sick in the swings. Lurvy was in bed by 8:30. He lay dreaming that he was throwing baseballs at a cloth cat and winning a genuine Navajo blanket. Mr. and Mrs. Zuckerman were in bed by 9. Mrs. Zuckerman lay dreaming about a deep freeze unit, and Mr. Zuckerman lay dreaming about Wilbur. He dreamt that Wilbur had grown until he was 116 feet long and 92 feet high. There's that picture of him dreaming that he's just the biggest pig ever. So high that he'd won all the prizes at the fair and was covered with blue ribbons and even had a blue ribbon tied to the end of his tail. Down in the cellar, the animals too went to sleep early. All except Charlotte. Tomorrow would be fair day. Every creature planned to get up early to see Wilbur off on the great adventure. When morning came, everybody got up at daylight. The day was hot. Up the road at the Arable's house, Fern lugged a pail of hot water to her room and she took a sponge bath. She put on her prettiest dress because she knew she'd see boys at the fair. Mrs. Arable scrubbed the back of Avery's neck and wet his hair, parted it, brushed it down hard till it stuck up at the top of his head. All about 6 hairs that stood straight up. Avery put on clean underwear, clean blue jeans, and a clean shirt. Mr. Arable dressed, ate breakfast, went out and polished his truck. He offered to drive everybody to the fair, including Wilbur. Bright and early, Lurvy put clean straw in Wilbur's crate, and he lifted it into the pig pen. The crate was green, and in gold letters it said, Zuckerman's Famous Pig. Charlotte had her web looking fine for the occasion. Wilbur ate his breakfast slowly. He tried to look radiant without getting food in his ears, and in the kitchen, Mrs. Zuckerman suddenly made an announcement. Homer, she said, I'm going to go get the pig a buttermilk bath. A what? Said Mr. Zuckerman. A buttermilk bath. My grandmother used to bathe her pig with buttermilk when it got dirty, and I just remembered. Wilbur's not dirty, said Zuckerman. He's filthy behind the ears, she said. Every time Lurvy slops him, the food runs down his ears and it dries and forms a crust. He also has a smudge on one side where he lays in the manure. He lays in clean straw, said Mr. Zuckerman. Well, he's dirty, and he's going to have a bath, she said. Mr. Zuckerman sat down weakly and ate a donut. His wife went to the woodshed, and when she returned, she wore rubber boots, an old raincoat, and carried a bucket of buttermilk and a small wooden paddle. Edith, you're crazy, he said, but she paid no attention. Together, they walked to the pig pen. Mrs. Zuckerman wasted no time. She climbed in with Wilbur and went to work. Oh, sorry, I don't know if you can see that. There they are. She was dipping her paddle in the buttermilk, and she rubbed him all over. The geese gathered around to see the fun, and so did the sheep and lambs. Even Templeton poked his head out to watch Wilbur get a buttermilk bath. Charlotte got so interested, she lowered herself down on a drag line so she could see better. If you look close at that picture, she's on the other side of Mrs. Zuckerman, I mean. Wilbur stood still and closed his eyes. He could feel the buttermilk trickling down his sides. He opened his mouth and let the buttermilk in. It was delicious. He felt radiant and happy. And when Mrs. Zuckerman got through and rubbed him dry, he was the cleanest, prettiest pig you ever saw. He was pure white, pink around the ears and snout, and smooth as silk. The Zuckermans went up to change into their best clothes. Lurvy went to shave and put on his plaid shirt and purple necktie. The animals were left to fend for themselves in the barn. The 7 goslings paraded around their mother. "Please take us to the fair," begged a gosling. "Please, please, please." They all made a racket. "Children," snapped the goose, "we are staying quietly at home. Only Wilbur is going to the fair." And just then Charlotte interrupted. "I think I shall go too," she said softly. "I've decided to go with Wilbur." Okay, so I'm going to stop there. I want to know, what do you think Wilbur is going to think when he hears that Charlotte is actually coming with him? Do you think he's going to be excited, nervous? What do you think? I think Wilbur is going to be ecstatic, like more than happy, because he loves Charlotte and he's so happy that she'll be there to help him. "He might need me, and we can't tell what may happen on those fairgrounds. Somebody's got to go along that knows how to write. And I think Templeton should come too. I might need somebody to run errands and do general work." "Oh, I'm staying right here," said Templeton. "I haven't had the slightest interest in fairs." "Well, that's because you've never been to one. A fair is a rat's paradise. People spill food at the fair. A rat can creep out late at night and have a feast. In the house barn, you'll find oats that the trotters and pacers have spilled. And in the trampled grass in the infield, you'll find discarded lunch boxes. In the hard-packed dirt of the midway, after the glaring lights are out, you'll find a veritable treasure of popcorn fragments and custard driblings, candied apples, fluff crystals, salted almonds, popsicles, partially gnawed ice cream cones, wooden sticks of lollipops. Everywhere is loot for a rat. Why, a fair has enough disgusting leftover food to satisfy a whole army of rats." Templeton's eyes were blazing. "Is this true? Is this appetizing yarn of yours true? I like high living, and what you say tempts me." "It is true," said the sheep. "Go to the fair, Templeton. You'll find that the conditions at a fair will surpass your wildest dreams. Buckets with sour mash sticking to them, and tin cans containing particles of tuna fish." "Oh, that's enough," said Templeton. "Don't tell me any more. I am going." "Good," said Charlotte, winking at the old sheep. "Now then, there's no time to be lost. Wilbur will soon be put in the crate. Templeton and I need to get in the crate now and hide ourselves." The rat didn't waste 1 minute. He scampered over to the crate, crawled between the slats, and pulled straw over him so he was hidden. "Okay," said Charlotte, "I'm next." She sailed into the air, let out a dragline, and dropped gently to the ground. Then she climbed to the side of the crate and hid herself inside a knothole in the top board. The old sheep nodded. "What a cargo. That sign ought to say Zuckerman's famous pig and 2 stowaways." "Look out, the people are coming," said the ganders. "Cheese it, cheese it." The big truck, with Mr. Arable at the wheel, backed slowly down toward the barnyard. Lurvy and Mr. Zuckerman walked alongside. Fern and Avery were standing in the body of the truck, hanging on to the sideboards. "Listen to me," whispered the sheep to Wilbur. "When they open the crate and try to put you in, struggle. Don't go without a tussle. Pigs always resist when they're being loaded." "But if I struggle, I'll get dirty," said Wilbur. "Never mind. Do as I say. Struggle. If you were to walk into the crate without resisting, Zuckerman might think you were bewitched. He'd be scared to go to the fair." Templeton poked his head up through the straw. "Struggle if you must," said he, "but kindly remember that I'm hiding down here in this crate, and I don't want to be stepped on, or kicked in the face, or crushed in any way, or squashed, or buffeted about, or bruised, or scarred, or biffed. Just watch what you're doing, Mr. Radiant, when you get shoving you in." "Oh, be quiet," said Templeton, said the sheep. "Pull in your head, they're coming. Look radiant, Wilbur. Lay low, Charlotte. Talk it up, geese." The truck backed slowly to the pig pen and stopped. Mr. Arable cut the motor, got out, walked around to the rear, and lowered the tailgate. The geese cheered, and Mrs. Arable got out of the truck. Fern and Avery jumped to the ground. Miss Zuckerman came walking down from the house. Everyone lined up at the fence and stood for a moment admiring Wilbur and the beautiful green crate. Nobody realized the crate already contained a rat and a spider. "That's some pig. Oh, he's terrific." "He is very radiant," said Fern, remembering the day he was born. "Well," Mrs. Zuckerman said, "he's clean anyway. The buttermilk certainly helped." Mr. Arable studied Wilbur carefully. "Yeah, he's a wonderful pig. It's hard to believe he was the runt of the litter. You'll get some extra good ham and bacon, Homer, when it comes time to kill that pig." Uh-oh. Wilbur heard those words and his heart almost stopped. "Oh, I think I'm going to faint," he whispered to the sheep who was watching. "Kneel down," whispered the sheep. "Let the blood rush to your head." Wilbur sank to his knees, all radiance gone. His eyes closed. "Look," screamed Fern, "he's fading away." "Hey, watch me," said Avery, crawling on all fours into the crate. "I'm a pig, I'm a pig." Avery's foot touched Templeton under the straw. "What a mess," thought the rat. "What fantastic creatures boys are. Why did I let myself in for this?" The geese saw Avery in the crate and cheered. "Avery, you get out of that crate," said his mom. "What do you think you're doing?" I'm a pig, oink, 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 said Avery, tossing handfuls of straw in the air. The truck is rolling away, Papa, said Fern. The truck, with no one at the wheel, had started to roll downhill. Mr. Arable dashed to the driver's seat and pulled on the emergency brake, and the truck stopped. Charlotte crouched and made herself as small as possible in the knothole so Avery would not see her. Come out at once, cried Mrs. Arable. Avery crawled out of the crate on his hands and his knees, and he made Phil's faces at Wilbur. Wilbur fainted away. Oh, the pig has passed out, said Mrs. Zuckerman. Throw buttermilk on him. Throw buttermilk, suggested Avery, and the geese cheered. So picture this. There's all these people. There's a truck flying away on accident. There's two animals hiding in the crate, and then Wilbur passes out. How would you describe that scene? I'm picturing like chaos, commotion. Oh, he just has sunstroke. The heat's too much for him. Maybe he's dead, said Avery. Come out of that pig pen immediately, yelled Mrs. Arable. Avery obeyed his mother and climbed into the back of the truck so he could see better. Lurvy returned with cold water and dashed it on Wilbur. Throw some on me, said Avery. I'm hot too. Oh, be quiet, hollered Fern. Her eyes were brimming with tears. She was so worried about Wilbur. Wilbur, feeling the cold water, came to. He rose slowly to his feet while the geese cheered. There's a picture of Lurvy throwing the water on his head to make sure he wakes up. He's up, said Mr. Arable. I guess there's nothing wrong with him. I'm hungry, said Avery. I want a candied apple. Wilbur's all right now, said Fern. We can start. I want to take a ride in the Ferris wheel. Mr. Zuckerman and Mr. Arable and Lurvy grabbed the pig and pushed him head first toward the crate. Wilbur began to struggle. The harder the men pushed, the harder he held back. Avery jumped down and joined the men. Wilbur kicked and thrashed and grunted. Nothing wrong with this pig, said Mr. Zuckerman cheerfully, pressing his knee against Wilbur's behind. All together now, boys, shove. With a final heave, they jammed him in the crate, and the geese cheered. Lurvy nailed some boards across the end so Wilbur couldn't back out. Then, using all their strength, they picked up the crate and heaved it aboard. They didn't know that under the straw was a rat, and inside the knothole was a big gray spider. They only saw the pig. Everybody in, said Mr. Arable. He started the motor, and the ladies climbed in beside him. Mr. Zuckerman and Lurvy and Fern and Avery rode him back, hanging onto the boards. The truck began to move ahead, and the geese cheered, and the children answered their cheer, and away went everybody to the fair. Alrighty, and that is it. So I want you to make a prediction now. What's going to happen when they get to the fair? Do you think that the kids are going to go play games and get some food? Well, if you've ever been to a fair, I want you to also think about how they have the areas where they keep the pigs and the cows and all that. And if you've never been to a fair, just picture it. Picture like a big carnival or a festival, and then they have a section with all the animals, and the animals can win prizes. So I want you to think, do you think Wilbur will win some type of prize or award? We'll have to find out next time. Thanks for joining me. Bye, guys.